Fantastic. It is the Jam 316 Parenting Tuesday. Every Tuesday we discuss issues parenting, and we have a very interesting conversation today. But before we get into the conversation, I want to ask you a question. What do you do as a parent? What should you do as a parent when, you feel like you've taught your child the right way to live life, the right things to do, but they want to do the exact opposite, especially when they become teenagers and they think they know everything, and you as a parent, you're old-fashioned. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with a rebellious teenager? Talk to me, 20316 SMS line. WhatsApp number 0786-316-316, and we'll get into that conversation shortly. Saizi, nataka tuchambue hii gazeti. Let's find out what's making headlines in the local dailies today. And the big story, Daily Nation, court throws power plan into a spin. It says, succession, last week's judgment declaring the bill to change the constitution null and void has scuttled a deal for an anticipated super alliance, which was hinged upon the proposed creation of new executive positions. That's the big story right there. Front page Daily Nation. Where, umepata nini? Huduma number yako. Have you gotten your Huduma number card? Yeah, all those who have gotten it, please lift up your hands. We need to see you. There's an article here why issuance of Huduma number cards is in limbo. It says Kenyans are dumbfolded after being told to travel hundreds of kilometers to collect cards. A myriad of factors, including defaulted mobile loans and a change in distribution policy by the government, has left issuance of Huduma number cards in limbo. Mimi sijapata yangu, hata sijawahi pata SMS nikachukue. I am one of those who is in limbo. I don't know what to do about that Huduma thing. Other stories you will find in the local dailies. There's quite a bit on the BBI. Kariuki files 2 cases in BBI rescue bid. The government's chief legal advisor yesterday filed twin applications in 2 courts. You can take a look at that story in the local dailies today. As I said, there's quite a bit on politics. You can take a look at that. Also quite a bit from the national news. On matters COVID-19, release COVID-19 jabs or face stiff penalties. Rich nations have been warned. Independent panel has indicated national and international systems for curtailing equitable distribution of vaccines. You can read that as well. Also, the mortuaries are suffering under the burden of unclaimed bodies despite anguished search by kin. The pullouts today, we have quite a number. You have smart business. Cookie crumbles from microfinances. It says mainstream banks are fast learners, and it did not take them long to steal the cake from the mouths of small lenders, who had carved a niche in the segment. And then you have SMEs. I quit my bank job for ornamental bird farming. Huyu jamaa naona yuko na nini hapa, inaitwa aje? Peacock. There was like a song back in the day that used to say Pikoko. So you can read this story, how he quit his bank job and he's gone into this kind of bird farming. And then you have Healthy Nation, which is the third pullout. Let me tell you what it's all about. It's talking about risky habits. From chewing gum to leaving the lights on, the little things you can do contribute to global warming. Oh my goodness, I didn't know that. Yeah. You can take a look at this story, quite a bit of information there. And then in the back pages of the Daily Nation today, new health budget kills hope for UHC. War against COVID-19 also dealt blow in the spending plan for the new financial year. And then in sports, fitness concerns for coaches as clubs get down to business. This is on the FKF Premier League. And then 2020 Olympic Games, over 80% in Japan oppose Olympics this year, as according to a poll that was conducted. I can see also quite a bit on this is athletics. So, my friend, those are some of the stories you will find in the local dailies today. Grab a copy, keep yourself informed on what's happening both locally and also internationally. We are getting into Parenting Tuesday shortly, and the question I'm asking you is, as a parent, what do you do when that teenager decides to go in a completely different direction from what you've taught them? They just become rebellious. They think they know best. How do you parent such a child? Talk to me. 20316 SMS line, WhatsApp number 0786316316. Maybe you are in that situation today. Let us know how the situation is. I've got a panel of experts who will talk to us and give us tips and information on what we need to do in that kind of a situation. But before we get to them, let me find out what you think. Morning, if it's Tuesday, wazazi, vuta stool karibu na TV, vuta stool karibu na radio, because we have a conversation we need to get into. This morning we are looking at that adamant child, teenagehood. Teenagehood, young adult, they just want to do what they want to do. How do you parent such a strong-willed child? They are strong-willed, but in the negative. Two amazing guests with us in studio today. I've got Beatrice Ogutu. Beatrice Ogutu is director at Investing in Children and Their Societies. Beatrice, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Pastor Jay. Thank you for having me in the show and looking forward for the discussions today.
Karibu sana.
Very interesting topic and
Yes.
the dilemma for most parents.
Oh,
So happy
yes.
to share experiences that we have.
Karibu sana, it's good to have you. I also have Francis Madenge, who's a teens counselor. Francis, how are you doing?
How are you doing, Pastor? It's good to see you. On the side, last time we met was on the physical side.
Yes.
Yeah, but excited really to really think through the whole idea of raising the next generation of adults.
Yeah.
Because these are the people that we entrust our nation to in the years to come.
Okay, great. So I'm just wondering, teenagehood, you know, when these children are young, you know, they do as they are told, you are their hero. Suddenly they get into teenagehood and it's like they become another person. What is it about teenagehood that we need to know? Maybe we can begin with you, Francis, because you're a teens counselor.
Yeah, and not so far from being a teenager. Yeah, also, so I think also it's interesting. I am raising a child. My firstborn son is now about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And everything I tell him is basically the truth.
Yes.
And he does it without asking questions. Now, the people that I'm discipling are of a different mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I've realized is that as children grow older, their perspective on who should be authority sort of shifts.
Yes.
You know, their source of happiness goes away from the parent, and that's a very scary thing to think about, because
Mm-hmm.
when they have issues and they need to go through life, their parents are not always the first place of asking solutions. More often than not, the reason is because, and I think that's where I was a few years ago, they feel like their parents no longer identify
Yeah.
with their struggles presently.
Okay.
Maybe because their parents are coming from a different age gap or something of the sort. So they feel like now mom and dad may not really identify with the things that I'm going through, the things I need to do at the moment.
Mm-hmm. You know, teenagehood is that period of life where the teenagers keep saying there's a disconnect, generation gap. Our parents don't understand us anymore. When I think back, I think we also said the same thing. I keep wondering, Beatrice, why does it seem that way when you're a teenager, that your parents are far removed from you? They have no idea what is going on in your life. They don't understand you.
Thanks, Pastor Jay. I think, as Frank has mentioned, as children grow up, when they're young, we are in full control as parents.
Mm-hmm.
As they grow older, things change. They're also growing rapidly. As they get into teenagehood, there are quite a number of changes that are happening in them. This is a period that most parents dread. We experience children being more curious, more inquisitive, more spirited. They question your every rule.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a dilemma for most parents, but the basic foundations of parenting in this stage is to fully understand what children are going through in this stage.
Yeah.
They are different. They can question your authority. Their circles of influence are expanding, so you're no longer the single source of truth or authority in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a period where parents need to be more sensitive. You know, teenagers need parents more than they would even want to admit in the first place. This is a period where guidance, where sensitivity, where parental responsiveness is important. It is also important for parents to understand what their children are going through in this stage. You know, there are hormonal changes, physical changes. They are seeking their own identity. And this is all confusing for them as well. So when parents understand what children are going through, then they cannot perhaps equate, you know, the inquisitiveness, the curiosity, the ability to engage in certain risky behaviors as rebellion or disobedience. It's just a stage of development. And I think it's important for parents to reflect back at this stage when they were themselves growing up and they were experiencing all these emotions, and they were hoping that the parents would be there for them, explain it to them. And I think for me, and based on experience over the last 8 years, this is a period where parents really need to be involved, available, and approachable for their children, so that the children find it easy to come to them, to approach them with issues that they're experiencing. And parents need to gather the courage to also explain to children what this stage is all about, and to set very clear rules and boundaries, explain those, and follow through with the consequences if these rules are violated.
I'm just wondering, how do you maintain a balance? Because sometimes you're trying to be a friend to your child because now they're maturing. You know, you can actually have some intellectual conversations with them. You can actually reason together because now, you know, they're in that phase of discovery. They're in that phase of learning. So you have to be a parent. You're trying to be a friend as well, and then they're discovering who they are becoming. But you also have an idea of who you would want them to become, and sometimes the two don't marry. So I'm just wondering, Francis, how do you create that balance within those years so that you don't lose your child? Many parents lose their children during those teenage years, especially wakienda high school.
It's interesting because I don't know. I've dealt with a couple of children in the past, especially in the church setup, where by the time a child, I mean, the whole, we keep saying you need to be an intentional parent, but sometimes we don't really ask ourselves, what does it mean? What does it really mean? So that means basically you've been a deliberate parent from day one.
Okay.
You can't be rushing to have a relationship with your teenager when they are 13. I mean, I can tell you for sure the waters are already under the bridge. And I think more often than not, because you mentioned the story of the balance between being a friend and being a parent.
Yeah.
Because what you're really asking is the balance between correcting a child and the relationship.
Yes.
And I think for me, the experience is that especially when a parent faces a situation that is a bit, I mean, it's making them look like the teenager is losing their way. My take has always been elevate the relationship above the situation. Elevate the relationship above the situation.
Okay.
Because then, if you don't elevate the relationship above the situation, the teenager becomes your enemy. It becomes a problem that needs to be solved. When the teenager becomes a task that needs to be done, it becomes a problem.
When you say elevate the situation, elevate the relationship, before the situation, give me an example of how that works out practically. Let's imagine my young teenage boy has been expelled from school because he led a riot in the school. Watu wali riot kwa shule na yeye ndio alikuwa ring leader. And I'm thinking, I can't wait to get my hands on him. I will lay my hands on him without prayer. So in a situation like that, how do I elevate the relationship above the situation? What do I do? Because I'm mad.
The thing is, Pasi, the first thing you need to, of course, to do whenever you are facing a situation, do not take it personally.
But it's personal. It's personal.
Not personal.
Nimemfundisha tabia mzuri na anaenda huko.
The moment you take it personally, you're already on the warpath.
Oh.
And I'm telling you for sure, that battle will not be won by the parent.
Is it wrong to be on the warpath?
It won't be won by the parent. It will be won by the teenager.
Okay.
Emotionally, they have more time to cringe back and become moody than you are. You have no time to invest in emotions. You want correction to be done now and done with it.
Okay.
But sometimes I think what I really wanted to say is that try to draw yourself into the teenager's corner. It will be very easy for you to go to the teenager's corner than for them to come to your corner as an adult. Because for the parents, you've been younger, and you perhaps you may be able to identify with what they are struggling. Because the issue is usually where are they? Where is this person? What is the really? Because in my experience, rebellion is actually fun.
Rebellion
is?
Parents
don't want to agree, but rebellion is fun. As far as the teenager is concerned,
yes,
it's very fun to rebel.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the kids that are really engaged in school are not the ones who follow the rules, are the ones that are on the bad side. So if you don't draw yourself to the corner and say, by there, actually, why is it that you have fun saying no to things that are supposed to be said yes to?
Yeah.
Because once you begin to identify with their situation, then they might be very free and tell you, by the way, this is what I want to be the cool kid in school. So if guys were rioting and I'm left in school,
Yeah.
where does that leave me?
I'm just wondering then, how do we handle matters discipline, Beatrice, when it comes to our teenagers? You know, they're in their late teens or in their mid-teens. When they miss the mark, when they go off the rails, how should I handle discipline? Because Francis is telling me not to take it personally and not to allow emotions to come in. But I am in that space. I am so mad. Somebody hold me and lock me in the bedroom because huyu mtoto mimi nitamchapa vibaya sana. So how do I discipline?
Pastor J, discipline, teaching children acceptable and unacceptable behavior all happens in a context of relationship.
Yeah.
The parent and the child must have a good relationship for the parent to be able to influence the values, the acceptable behavior that you want to promote or inculcate in your children. So for me, investing in building relationships and quality time that you spend in your children, even when things are not wrong, I think we tend to approach our children or confront them or have discussions when things are really tough with our children. So building an environment where communication thrives in the family, where you find opportunities to share moments together, create memories together, those provide a good foundation for you to handle the sensitive topics or, you know, the more difficult issues that you want to discuss with your teenager. But if we make it a habit of only approaching them or talking to them when things are wrong, they can be quite defensive. So, you know, creating that environment where, you know, connection, emotional connection, you know, relationships are built up in the normal day-to-day family settings gives us the window as parents to be able to approach them when sensitive issues happen. But also in terms of discipline, we are taught in Proverbs, you know, train up. When we're talking about training up children to do the right thing, training methods, parents have to exercise a lot of wisdom around training. Training is not only telling children what to do, it's also about, you know, clarifying what kind of behavior you expect, what are the consequences of those behavior. Training can also be, you know, instructing children what to do, but clarification, explanation, following through with consistency in terms of when those rules are violated is also important. Teenagers will push our limits. They will always seek autonomy in so many ways. But our ability of parents to follow through and consistently, you know, both look at the positive reinforcement. So when they do good things, we need to praise them. We need to affirm them. When they do bad things, we really need to, you know, follow through with the consequences. But I think the dilemma or the challenge for most parents is we catch them when they are doing bad. We need to also make it a habit of catching them when they are doing good and reinforcing the good things that we say. That's why they keep on saying, my parents don't understand me. They are analog, you know, how hawatuelewi. Everything I do is bad. Catch them when they're also doing something good. Praise them, affirm them. Remember, this is a period where they are seeking their own identity. They are curious about the world around them, and their cycle of influence is also changing. So also seek to monitor and supervise. What is your teenager doing? Who are they hanging around with? What are they watching? Be involved, be present, be available. You know, you can be present and not available. You're at home, but you're busy. You're at home, but you're on your gadget. So be approachable so that they can find it very comfortable to reach out to you and explain their concerns.
Okay. You know, the other day, a couple of weeks ago, I think it was last month, if I'm not wrong, Kirk Franklin was trending because of this conversation he had with his firstborn child, you know, and this guy is an adult, really. He's an adult, but he's still behaving like a child anyway. And so this son of his recorded it and he posted it on social media. And it was, the emotions were high, my friend Francis. The emotions in this conversation were over the roof, you know. So I saw that, and then I also saw another famous preacher. The son is an atheist. And it's like everything the dad is preaching, the son is preaching the opposite, you know. And so shortly we'll talk about this. How How do you handle the situation whereby this teenager or this young adult decides that your values are not the values they want for their life? They're 18, 19, 20, and they decide, you know what? I've been going to church all my life because you guys forced me to. But I really don't believe in this God you guys keep preaching. I really don't. Me, I'm an atheist. Yeah? Or you know what? Me, I'm gay. What do you do? How do you handle those hard situations as a parent? Do you stop loving them? Do you kick them out of the house? How do you handle that? We'll talk about that shortly. It's Parenting Tuesday. We are discussing how do you parent a child who's adamant. They are just strong-willed, but in the wrong direction. If you have experiences you want to share with us, 20316 SMS line. WhatsApp number 0786316316. Let's listen to Dan and Shay coming in with the song When I Pray For You. Oh, we need prayers. Pray for us, wazazi. Tunahitaji maombi. It is all about parenting, and we are focusing on that child, especially a teenager or a young adult who just decides they want to go in the wrong direction. How do you parent them? I'm hanging out this morning with Beatrice Ogutu, director at Investing in Children and Their Societies, and also Francis Madenge, who is a teens counselor. Some of the comments coming in today, I've got Liz Wamboyi. Liz Wamboyi, you say it's not easy to bring up teenagers, but if you want to bring up a teenager, you have to study them. First of all, you have to behave like you don't know what is happening. Then next, come down to their level and speak to them. It is very easy to become a friend if only you have been there for them. If you've been absent, you will find that they reject everything that you are saying. Dave in Lower Kabete, Dave is saying, when it comes to parenting, it is a heritage that God has bequeathed us. Nonetheless, it's never easy. King David and Prophet Samuel were successful men, but not at raising their children after God. Funny, Eli got to nurture Prophet Samuel and not his sons. I think one has to set a good example and be persistent in good times when they behave well, encourage them, and in bad times when they behave badly, do not reward but flag it down. Once all is done, we don't give up on the rebellious. Ultimately, life is full of choices, and they will decide and bear the consequences of their choices. So, what do I do with this child who decides that your God is not my God, your people are not my people? You want to go in that direction, me, I'm going in this direction. Francis, what do I do? And I'm very emotional about this one.
That's a tough one. I am trying to imagine my own case with my own son decides to follow another God more than the one I know. I don't know what is going to happen, but it's going to be, it can be chaotic. But let me first of all say, sometimes, especially during our upbringing, the values that we want to impose on our children, first of all, our children will always see whether they really make any sense to us. If I really preach the whole idea of honesty and integrity to my son, does he see the same in my day-to-day life? So then he begins to see the values that I am actually telling him, that I actually hold them dear, and I value them, because the way you value whatever you are saying to them is basically how you live your life. So sometimes you can be a believer, a parent who is a believer, but the things that you want your children to adopt are things that are also very strange to you because you don't follow them. So sometimes our convictions as we grow up, or as we raise them, is also very important. But also, Pasi, and we need to agree that we are raising our children in a very highly secular world. And it comes to a point where the influence, perhaps more often than not, will be beyond us. And what have we invested? I like what the Bible says, that train a child in the way that he should grow, that even when he's older, he will not depart from it. It is our as parents to actually show the child the gate to follow. It's our work. And I know for sure, and I've seen people, in my own life, I've seen people my age who were brought up in proper Christian family, proper Christian values. But when we went to campus, people went south. But the good thing is that those of us that were brought up in proper values, I have seen them now in our where we are in families, people beginning to come back to God. And I think, as a parent, you should never feel discouraged that you deposited the godly values in your children, and they seem like they are departing from it. A godly value never goes away. That's for sure. They may try to say they don't believe in the things that you're saying, but if there's a proper deposit that is in your heart, I am totally convinced that that value never goes away. But however, in a moment when our children are faced with crisis to do with their own belief system, that's actually when they need us more than ever. We do not need to walk away at that point where they seem to be contesting between whether what's actually true. Is it Jesus? Is it Kanye West, perhaps? Or is it Mariah Carey? Because nowadays we have people who are following more than Jesus in the world today. In that particular time is when these children need us more than ever. So that then you walk them through their journey of confusion, because they're basically confused.
Yeah.
So walk with them through the journey of confusion. So then at the end of it, they begin to value that you as their dad or their parent, you don't view them as a project that needs to end up well.
Because
you actually look at them as a child that you need to perhaps see them grow up in a proper value system.
Because I believe every child comes to that point where they have to discover for themselves.
True.
They have to discover. You've taught them all these things. You know, you've taught them, don't do this, do this, do this, do this. You know, but they have to come to a place where, okay, that is what my father said, that is what my mother said, but I want to discover it for myself. And I think sometimes as parents, when they get to that stage, we don't know what to do with them, because it almost seems like they're rebelling. But I love what you've said, that they are at a place where they need us the most, because they're trying to stabilize their beliefs and their faith and their values and all that. But I'm just wondering, Beatrice, you know, some of these things, if they're things that don't, as ijatoka inje, the society doesn't know about them, it's easy to deal with them. But what about if the values and the lifestyle that this young person is choosing is open to the neighborhood? They've decided they'll be the neighborhood drunk, or they've decided they will be the young girl who sleeps around with everybody in the neighborhood. They've already gotten a title, so it's out there. Or they've decided they'll be the thug in the neighborhood. How do you deal with that? Do you throw them out of the house? How do you parent them within such a situation?
Thank you, Pastor Jay. I think challenging behavior experienced or exhibited by teenagers can be very frustrating for parents, especially when it's out of the privates of the home. And therefore, from experience, I think when a parent has deposited, the way Frank has said, all the values, because contexts change, behavior will change, your love doesn't have to change. Okay. When you have imparted, you have modeled the right behavior, you also need to be a bit forgiving to yourself as a parent when you've done all the things that you have done to promote the right behavior or the right values that you want to promote for your children. So it's paramount that your love doesn't change. It's paramount that you don't stop, parenting that particular child. It's important also that you get support, because remember, their cycle of influence is also changing. So beyond you, who else can come in and provide that kind of guidance and support that, the teenager or the young adult needs at this particular stage when they're exhibiting very risky behavior? Either they are experimenting with drugs, or they are drunkards, or, as you say, engaging in risky sexual behavior. So it's important for parental sensitivity and guidance to continue. It's important for you as a parent to forgive yourself if you have inculcated all the right knowledge, the right values in your children. Remember, in Deuteronomy, we are told, when we are talking about the 10 commandments, that impress these laws continues. There's no vacation in parenting. Yeah. When you're awake, when you're at home, when you're walking, when you're waking up. That's what the Bible tells us. So there's no vacation. We continue with our role as parents. Yeah. We elevate ourselves beyond the situation, do the best we can be able to do, get help for yourself in terms of supporting that child, but also get that child to get help from other sources. There are a number of programs by churches that provide a lot of guidance and support to young people. So get a support system around you to help you work with this teenager, but be present, be available, don't change your love. Forgive yourself. Sometimes we are very critical of ourselves as parents. Go beyond the anger. Try to listen more, understand the child more, be there when they are available to come back. And sometimes I think it's also important to let them make their own mistakes.
Very true.
Mtoto akililia wembe, calculated mistakes. So there are things that you can let them do so that they can learn from experience. Training up is also part of letting them, learn. When they make their own mistakes, they learn to cope, they learn to adapt, they learn responsibility. So there are certain things that you let go of, but calculate in a calculated way. Wisdom really has to be exercised by parents.
I'm just wondering, what's that thin line between tough love, when to give tough love, and not to find yourself being an enabler, that you're enabling your child to continue to live this kind of dysfunctional life. I'll never forget, a friend of mine was telling me how, the brother was just wayward. And one day the father decided, I've had enough of this. You are a young man, you should be in your own house. And so they actually moved house, but they didn't tell him. One day he had gone out for his escapades, and he came back in the evening, and the house was empty. They had moved, and they did not tell him where they had moved to. And he had to style up and become a man and begin taking care of himself. So what's the place of tough love, and what's that line that I should not cross, whereby now I'm becoming an enabler to facilitate this kind of lifestyle that my child has chosen to live? Francis, what do I do?
Of course, to begin with, Pasi, all of us identify with the story of the prodigal son.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all factors remaining constant. There's a man who should never have been received in that home. I mean, after squandering all the things that you were given by your dad, and you show up to a party.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the perfect example of the love that God shows us. And I think parents are called even to a higher dimension to offer the same. Mm-hmm. However, and I don't know, I'm a man, and maybe Beatrice will respond to raising girls. And I know if your parent is raising an adult young man,
yeah,
there's a point where honestly, and the road has to show up in a different way,
Mm-hmm.
And when the Bible talks about sparing the road and spoiling the child, the road in the modern days that we are in needs to be redefined. We need to redefine the road and see at which point do I actually dish it out, because I know of parents who, and I think this is a dilemma that parents have found themselves in. You are not very available when this child was growing up.
Yeah.
So now they are 20. They are becoming wayward. So now, because you were not very available when you were growing up, now you overcompensate
mm-hmm.
by becoming so much, tolerating so much things. And I've seen this in my discipleship journey with teenagers.
Yeah.
A parent is always out of town because we need to chase the paper. We need to make these children go to the better school. So what happens is that the child begins to find other spheres of influence. So the danger here is and I have seen parents who actually let go of so many things are actually overcompensating.
Okay.
Because you have your own inadequacies, so you need to show up by thinking you think you're showing them love by letting so many things go unquestioned.
Mm-hmm.
By so doing, you're actually setting your child for bigger failure in the future, because it's your work to call out wrong, and this wrong needs to be called out by all manner of way possible as God will give you the wisdom. So sometimes if my son comes home every single day drunk and wayward, at what point do I say, okay, this is my house and my rules,
mm-hmm.
we need to be a bit clear on this? Or do you say, they're enjoying life as far as, furthermore, they are coming home, the others don't show up, so mine comes home, even if he's coming drunk. So at some point, you need to actually realize as a parent, you're actually setting up your child for bigger failures by
mm-hmm.
not calling out. You have heard of this story of this guy who used to be a thief, and every time he show up home with a stolen item, and the mother would never ask a question.
Yeah.
And one day, when he was thrown into prison, he actually blamed his parent. You actually blame his parent for not calling out wrong when it was actually wrong.
Okay.
Because in our modern day, we need to redefine loving them as loving our children as it's wrong.
Okay. I've got a question here. Maybe Beatrice, you can take this one. It says, good morning. I promised my teenage daughter to attend a function in July, but I have realized that it is with wrong company, and I want to stop her. Please advise, because I don't know how she will react to it.
Thank you for that question. I think for me as a parent, you're the authority here.
Mm-hmm.
You have already realized that, I have given my teen freedom to attend a certain event. along the way, I've realized that the event is not good, or the people who are going to attend. So have those conversations, those sensitive, deep conversations with your teen with regards to, you know, this event is not good. I've discovered that, you know, there are people who are coming, they might not be good influence to you. So I know sometimes it's difficult. That's why I said up in the beginning that, you know, training up, influencing your teen happens in the context of a relationship.
Yeah. Good
conversations, good connections with your teen, and being able to have those deeper conversations around, I will not allow you to go because of this and this and this, and this is because of this. So clarify, explain, make it clear. Let us not shy away from, you know, shielding and protecting our children from situations that, you know, they might, you know, pick up the wrong behavior or, you know, engage in risky behavior. So courage to be able to be sensitive to talk to them about this, clarifying why you're not agreeing them to go. And I know it's difficult. They might throw tantrums the teenage way, but yeah, when a behavior is not acceptable, it is not acceptable. I think those negotiations need to have conversations, not negotiations. When you think it's unacceptable, you just have to make it clear to the teen at that point.
Okay. This one is asking, says, thank you so much for the advice on overcompensating. How does a widow correct a young adult boy who's full of anger after his father's death a few years ago? He's rude to the mother and he's just got anger tantrums all over the place. What do you do with such a young man, Francis?
I think, Pasi, that is, the teenager is actually dealing with grief in a very different way. He's actually dealing with grief by showing up anger.
Okay.
And the parent is going to really agree that people deal with grief in different ways. Some people withdraw. Some people are angry at everyone and at everything.
Yeah.
And so actually what the parent needs to really, and I can't even imagine how the mother is actually dealing with the loss of her husband. But for the son is actually dealing with the loss of his father through anger. Because, I mean, nobody prepares us for death. So, of course, ultimately, what I would advise is that seek the services of a professional counselor would walk this child throughout the journey of mourning. But as it were, you need to perhaps agree that the anger has nothing to do with him. The anger has everything to do with his grief, his grieving season.
Yeah.
And this might continue for long. We don't limit the season and time that someone takes to grieve, especially for a parent. That's a huge loss. So, but again, showing love and understanding to this child is very critical, because so then you need to draw your son to a space where he also needs to understand that you also are coming to terms with the loss of your father. He was both in your spaces. So once you get into a common space, the two of you, perhaps you can even become a place for both of you to find solace and find comfort. But in an extreme situation, the best option would be to seek the services of a proper counselor who would walk you. Because in my experience, if he keeps bottling up this anger, then he may never be able to deal with his grief properly.
Okay.
And what happens that some of these feelings that we bottle up within ourselves will begin to become our source of self-ruin. And we don't want to get to that particular point. So my advice is get to understand that he's dealing with his grief in a very special way, and that's anger, but also draw yourself to his corner. After you do that, then you can perhaps be able to understand that you also, as my mom, you're also going through a season of trying to come to terms with the loss of your husband and who is my father. So grief is a very personal journey, in my experience. You can't really redefine how you deal with the loss of a loved one. So you need to get a space where you have people who actually allow you sometimes to deal it with the way it comes, because there'll be a season of being very okay, also be phases of being terribly not okay.
I'm just wondering, as we finish, Beatrice, as a parent, should I ever allow myself to get to that place where, like Pilate, nimeosha mikono? I have had parents use that term, nimeosha mikono. You do what you want to do, live your own life out there, bear the consequences, don't come back crying to me. You've made your choices, you've made your bed, sleep in it, orindwe, tuonane, bye. Should you ever get to that place where you wash your hands, where your children are concerned?
Parenting is a God-given responsibilities. I think out of frustration, parents do a lot of things to cope with the challenges that they're experiencing in parenthood. But we are not allowed to be able to get to that stage where you say, you know what, just do. I've just talked earlier about, calculated risks. You know, there are mistakes you can allow them to make so that they learn out of the circumstance. But your love doesn't have to change. Your guidance and setting limits and boundaries that remain. When we are frustrated as parents, we should be able to get help, take care of our own mental well-being, take care of ourselves so that we can be available to do our God-given role. So there's no vacation in this thing. It's our God-given responsibility. We have to seek help. We have to, when we feel a bit frustrated, we also have to, co-parent very well with our spouses. Let's have that positive environment at home. But I think the bottom line, our mental well-being as parents is key, because children learn more from the, behaviors that we model. It's more about what you model, what you show, how you show up at home, so that they learn. We are not allowed to take vacation, but we are allowed to seek help, and it is right to seek help when you need it. So yeah,
you don't want
we are
us
not
to wash
allowed
our
to
hands.
give up. Not quite.
Go.
Hakuna kuenda.
Our time is up, Francis.
Tutasema hiyo out of anger and frustration. But we are not allowed to give up on our children. We are allowed to get ourselves help, get themselves help, and just keep the journey until we get them to that stage when they can be responsible adults.
Liz is telling me that the parents who wash their hands have got issues of their own that they are going through. That is so true. My time is up, Francis. What's your parting shot, especially to parents who have teenagers in their homes? What parting shot can you give them?
My call to parents is that please go out and love your children. Go out and love your children. At the end of the day, love wins. And let me tell you, they can be confused about many things, but let them never be confused about your love for them.
Wow, I like that. Beatrice, parting shot.
Understand your teenagers. It's a phase of development. So parents need to learn them, be sensitive to them at this stage, talk to them, create those connections that then will make their teenagers feel that they are approachable should there be a concern. Monitor, supervise, set limits, and follow through consistently. Affirm when they do good things. Don't only talk when they do bad things. Affirm them, praise them. When they also do good things. At the end of the day, love wins, and those limits have to be set for them to grow up to be responsible adults.
Asante sana. Beatrice and Francis, thank you for your time this morning, and thank you for your wisdom. Wazazi, tumeambiwa mambo emotions tuweke kando. Na hakuna kuosha mikono. These are our children. We have to love them, and we have to keep setting the right example. Hata wakipotea njia, let's just remain like that father, the prodigal son's father. He remained watching every day. They will come back. That's all the time we have for Parenting Tuesday today. Have yourselves a lovely day.